Tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia ki te nako, o ngā tangata katoa, there is but one, and it is your love. Ko te mea nui, ko te aroha.
Kia ora māno tātou. Ka tūau mo tō tātou karakia mo tēnei wā. Ka huri ahau ki roto i tō tātou haerenga, he mihi whakatau, ka whakahoki ahau ki aia ki atunu. Ka kāriki pōho i tere kotia te pū, wai hoi konei ko ia te kāuru, wai hoi konei he ai hoki au ko te unua te tuhi. Ki hai tai ki ngā pū, ki ngā wānanga, ki ngā tāwera. Patua kuru, patua whā, patua te toki o tai haruru piki ake nei au ki runga ki te huka huka nui o te whare o Tangaroa. I wati ai e nuku tae maroro. E nuku tae maroro pera hoki rāko au ko hine tua hoanga. Kimi ana, hāhau ana i te whānau wā rātā. Rātā i mate atu ki piko piko e whiti. Mate, maranga mai ki whitunuku te tatauranga. Whāno, whāno, hara mai te tōki. Haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Ko te mea tuatahi ko te wehe ki te ariki nui. Me whakakororia tia tōna ingoa i ngā wā katoa. Ki te papa e takoto nei ki waho, tēnā koe. Ki te rangi e tū mai nei, tēnā koe. Ki tō tātou whare, tēnā koe hoki. Kia koutou kua wehe atu ki te pō, koutou kua wheturangi tia ki raro i te korowai o rangi nui. Haere, haere, haere atu rā. Te hunga ora ki te hunga ora, te hunga mate ki te hunga mate. Arā ki a tātou katoa, tātou ki oku kaimahi i tēnei pō, koutou ki tō koutou whare, o tō tātou whānau o tēnei whare karakia a Shaw Vineyard, nau mai, hare mai, piki mai, kake mai rā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well, kia ora Parker, kia ora Mark, kia ora Shaw Vineyard family, wherever you are, if you're in your home, if you're watching this not live, welcome. This is a real pleasure to be having this kōrero tonight with you guys. We were joking before, it's a bit more nerve-wracking than pre-recording it, just because if we say something offensive, you can't just stop it. So we'll have to take the whole feed down. But no, it's lovely that you can be here with us and for you guys to be here. So thank you so much for coming in. Tonight we're talking about Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, or the Māori language moment, which if you've been looking on your Facebook feeds or Instagram or New Zealand Herald or stuff, you'll notice a celebration of the Māori language, and which is awesome because it hasn't always been this way in New Zealand history. It's been a contentious thing, and it's so good to see that it's being celebrated and with Māori language as an inroads into exploring Waira Māoritanga. So tonight, if you're at home on the live Facebook feed and you have any questions that you'd like to ask Parker or Mark, feel free to send them through to Fraser on the Facebook, and later on we'll get to a bit of Q&A as it comes through. But before that, I think it's just really important to get to know you guys. And if you don't know, I'm Tim. I'm an associate pastor here. I'm fairly new as well, so there may be some fresh faces for you at home if you don't know us. But it's cool. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here with you guys. So firstly, introductions. Like, should we start with you, Parker? Who are you? Where are you from? Who are you from? And like, what do you do? What do you do?
Kia ora. Mena ka pātai tētahi tangata ki āhau tērā pātai. Ko te mea tuatahi te whakaputunga nōhea āhau. Nō reira, me timata taku kōrero ki tōku pepehane. I te taho o tōku whāia, he uri ahau no te taitokerau. Nō reira, ko pangoru te maunga, ko whakarapa te awa, ko ngā toki mata whāurua te waka. He hononga ahau ki ngā marae maha o pangoru, nō reira motu tī, mā tihetihe, Ngāti manawa ko waipuna hoki ngā marae. Ko heremia te wake te matua tupuna, ko te rārawa, ko ngāpuhi ngā iwi, ko Ngāti manawa, ko te kai tūtai, ko te waiariki ngā hapu, ko rāhiri te ariki. Kia ora, i te taha whakawhiti atu ki te taha o tōku pāpa, he uri ahau no te tai rāwhiti. Nō reira ko kahu ātiu te maunga, ko waikāka riki te awa, ko takitimu, ko horuuta ngā waka. Anō, he hononga ahau ki ngā marae maha o te rawahi, engari ko te rongopai te marae. Hea tonu, ko tūranga nui a kiwa te moana, heaha atu, aroha mai. Ko te whānau kai, ko te aitanga mahaki ki o Ngāti Porou, ko rongo whakaata, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ngā iwi, engari ko Ngāti Hine, Ngāti Rua ngā hapu. Ko Wipere te matua tupuna, ko kai koreo nei te ariki. Ai, i tēnei waka whakahuri ahau ki te reo tuarua. So I'm a... Thanks for the intro, Tim. I'm a descendant of the north, the far north. My family come from the north side of Hokianga on my mum's side. And on my dad's side, we have lineage from the East Cape all the way down to Hawke's Bay. Aside from my Māoritanga, I also have roots that go back to Scandinavia, the early settlers in America, English, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh is in there as well. Was that all the questions?
Yeah.
I feel like I've run off a lot there.
No, that's cool. And how do you end up here, like in Shore Vineyard community?
It's probably been a bit of a journey in itself, in my personal journey, but also with my whānau, my partner, my hoa rangatira. And she's been longing to find a place to, share her faith. And I've been wanting to support that and to find that connection as well. And we live 2 minutes walk from this whare karakia. So we thought we'd take a stroll down and check it out and meet the whānau. And yeah, we've been greeted with open arms every time we've come, and it feels like home. Hasn't been a year yet, but feels like it's been much longer than that. Aye.
Oh, it's good to have you part of this community and to get to know you. And Mark, what's your background?
Ai, no Kotorani, rawa no Ingarangi au. E hara au I te tangata Māori. Engari I whakatipu au I konei. I whānau mai I Wiki, te motu Wiki. I te pake au I whangaparawa. I whāngai tuka papa, a Stuart Ralston, no Ngāti Toa ia, I te wā o taku te maititanga. Ko Mark Ralston au. Yeah, I'm Pākehā, which is a strange for me to be sitting here in a way, but yeah, just I'm kind of on a journey. My own kind of journey, and yeah, I'm in love with the Māori culture, and it hasn't been a part of my life for the whole of my life, but sort of in the last sort of 10 years, I've sort of found it, and it's just something I love to be a part of and love to talk about. So yeah, that's who I am and kind of why I'm here, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot from you guys around your journeys and experiences with this. Before getting on to that, both you guys are in roles within your day-to-day life that involve a lot of te reo and Māoritanga. What do you do with your day jobs?
Ka tīmata koe?
Ai. So I'm a teacher, kaiko, kei Te Kura Silverdale, Te Kura Tuatahi, so at Silverdale Primary School. And I became a teacher about 9 years ago. And I kind of fell into the role of leading, we called it Te Reo Māori back then. And it was more focused on the language, and it was something that wasn't being done very well, to be honest. And so that's just something I picked up, and it's just progressed into the role I do now, which is, this a term they use called the ko, but preferred term is kahui ako, of Orewa, which is basically we have a collective of schools that feed into Orewa College, and it's my job to go around those schools and sort of help them and give them ideas, almost like a consultant in a way, just ideas that have worked in my kura, that in my practice, that they could try as well. Sure. And also just share ideas, things that are working well in one kura that can be shared across all of our kura, and trying to have a better pathway for all our tamariki as they go from early childhood all the way through to their time in college. So that's kind of my overall role. And it's something, it's actually my dream job. And I would have never foreseen it coming. I kind of started off with a little bit, with no language actually. When I first started teaching, I would grapple and grab bits here and there. Realised we were doing a terrible job, and started reaching out and getting people to help me and learn as much from wherever I could. And then, just after about 4 or 5 years, it's just, this job just fell in front of me. And it's probably a real God thing. It is. It's not a job that, I foresaw coming, and it's not a job that many people kind of get to have. So that's what I do during the day. Aye.
Thank you, Mark. And yourself, Parker?
He mihi tuatahi I tēnei wā ki toku whānau e mātakitaki mai ana, kei ahau e tōringa tamariki, me taku hoa rangatira, āreka harana, taika te koha tāne mai rangi nui, ngā kura o hini nui te pō, kia ora koutou. My job, currently I'm working as a taurāwhiri in Mason Clinic, which is a forensic hospital based over in West Auckland. And my job is about, kind of like your mahi, bro, it's a little bit about consulting with clinical staff, with doctors and nurses and psychologists and psychiatrists, and helping them to treat our tangata Māori, which is a massive part of our clients, our tangata whai te ora, tangata people whai I te ora, searching for wellness, is giving them guidance around how they can be culturally safe in their practice when they're dealing with our people. So there's that side, so I work with the clinical side, and then there's the other side where I support mostly tangata Māori, but anybody really who needs support, no matter what it is, however they might need support that they're not getting from the clinical team, and sometimes that they're not comfortable asking the clinical team. So since I've been there, I've been asked to do some really interesting things that the doctors and the nurses in my team have gone, oh, they didn't tell me about that. I didn't know that they wanted to go home to see their whānau or whatever, So it's a little bit of a juggle between both. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's awesome. Both sound like very important and very, influential roles to bring, a deep understanding of culture and a deep understanding of language, which gives a really good framework to help people and influence people. Within your role, Mark, have you seen it change quite a lot in terms of attitudes towards the language and the culture?
There's been a huge shift in the time since I began to now, and so I'm really lucky in that regard. This makes my job a lot easier. So when I first started there was excuses. Everyone had an excuse as to why they weren't or wouldn't or couldn't teach Te Reo Māori. It was just, you know, so at that time I'd be like, but, and then they'd just throw, and I wasn't ready for it. But progressively over the time since I began teaching to now, those excuses, which are, you know, walls and barriers to the people going to teach it, have just been crumbling away. Partly because I think many, and it's not, I can't really generalise across the whole country, but within my wahi anyway, a lot of people, those, I don't know, their attitude towards Te Reo is they've started to sort of appreciate it more, and Te Ao Māori, the whole culture, they've started to appreciate more, and particularly in my kuta, as we started bringing in things like kapahaka, which didn't exist, which is ridiculous, but once we started bringing in things like that, and Maurako started coming in, and people started seeing how rich our lives could be with Te Ao Māori being a part of it, people started to get excited about it, and slowly those excuses and walls just fell away, and it's just been awesome to be here at this time. I think we're in an amazing time right now. I know when I was young, I grew up in that exact area, which is why I love being back there, and it just was not existent. There was nothing. I went through primary school and I just felt, I left school, the ending of my school at college, I didn't feel like I had this great identity, this great sense of who I am and where I'm from and where I belong. And I sort of felt over these last few years on this journey, I've been able to pick that up. I think lots of people are on that journey at this time as well that I'm working with, which is just awesome. It's an awesome time to be involved in this, and people are a lot more open to it right now. So.
It's awesome. And as a Pākehā, how have you found that within the journey? What are the big things that you've realised, or maybe blind spots that you've had?
Ooh. It's a funny thing because growing up, I grew up in an area that was predominantly Pākehā, so I wasn't aware. I was just ignorant, really. I had no idea what was going on. Sort of diverting from your question a little bit, but yeah, I guess the thing that has set me up is that for my role anyway, is that I kind of have an awareness of what it's like to be Pākehā, but wanting to do right. And it's set me up in the position where I know what it's like to feel vulnerable, and I know what it's like to have all those excuses, because I've had them all before, so I can talk to people and say, hey, I know those excuses, but hey, let's get rid of this excuse this way, and let's do this to get rid of this reason, and, you know, you could do this, and you know, and so I have the ability to stand up in front of people and be vulnerable and not necessarily be the answer to everything, and be like, man, I'm Pākehā, I'm weak, and in terms of the amount I know, I don't know everything, but I know that together we can do a lot better. So yeah, that's probably the strength I have. Yeah, and I'm not the person who should be doing it necessarily, but at this time it's just something that I'm set up for. So
yeah, I guess that the humility within that is it models a pathway that so many of us can go on this journey as well, you know, and just be open to asking questions and listening a whole lot more,
and making making mistakes is not something you aspire to do, but being willing to just give it a go, make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, you know, and be vulnerable. Yeah.
It's awesome. And Parker, and chatting with you this week, and even when you were speaking just before, I can feel deeply that you care about what you're doing now, and it's close to your heart and close to your passion within that. So within the role you're in now, obviously your whole life's led up to this moment. How do you find your story influence your ability to, I guess, meet people where they're at culturally and within their stories?
That's a good part, Tim. You know, one big thing that I want to do with my life is to empower people, whether that's encouraging you to take up a gym membership, or encouraging you to learn more about your whakapapa. So a lot of what I've learned in my life, I've been quite lucky. You know, not a lot of people have been able to be in the position where I have. So when I meet tangata, whai te ora, or just people in general, I feel this sense of how can I help? How can I help you on your journey, whatever that journey is? If it's te ao Māori and tikanga Māori, whereabouts are you up to now? You know, trying to get a gauge on that. If it's te reo, you know, you've got a lot of people in where I work who didn't get the reo when they were young. And they're just starting to pick it up now in their 30s, 40s, 50s, you know. So the journey's the same for them, for a lot of other people as well, who are just picking it up now. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah. I mean, my reo came when I was really young, so I was lucky to have a really strong foundation to work with. And it's been in the last 5 years that I've really picked it back up. And honestly, I haven't done a lot of work for it to come back. It's all been there, just sitting like dormant, and it just needed a bit of an awakening. And I've put myself into a few positions where Māori is the only language that's been spoken, and I've had to kind of hit the ground running and try and catch up.
So in growing up, did you speak, say, around the home?
So I went to kura kaupapa. So I went to two kura kaupapa. The first one was Hoani Waititi, which was the first kura kaupapa. And then I went to another one in Kelston called Waipareira.
And a kura kaupapa is?
A kura kaupapa is a full immersion Māori school.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so you only speak Māori.
Yeah.
You only get taught in te reo Māori. In your lunch breaks, you only speak te reo Māori, and then all your schoolwork's in te reo Māori. You go home, you do your homework, it's all in te reo Māori, and your whānau generally would only speak to you in te reo Māori. Now I know that some whānau didn't, but mine did. Luckily, I was lucky enough that when I went home, the reo continued, and it was just a normal part of everyday life. Yeah.
And when was that up till? Because there's in primary schools, I think primary school age. Are there high schools as well?
Yep, it goes all the way up. Yeah, so it goes from I don't know what the year is. It the year one? Is it the beginning of primary?
Year zero.
Year zero, yeah, I all the way up to form, seventh form. So that happened I was in kura kaupapa until I was 8, and at 8 years old, we started transitioning. Some things were happening within my whānau. And that was also when I really started hearing te ao Pākehā, hearing the English language.
Wow.
And this would happen in our general drive to the shop, and the car windows would be down, and Mum would go in and grab some milk, and I would hear it being spoken. And then she'd come back and we'd be like, hea te rā kōrero I whakarongo atu au ki ngā tamariki ki konei. And she'd be like, okay. Ko te reo tuarua tēnā. That's your second language. And yeah, so from 8 years old, we started learning about te ao Pākehā, and she brought in a whole bunch of books into our home, and that's how we started to read English. Yeah.
Wow. So that was your childhood, just growing up, full immersion.
Yeah, up to that point.
Wow.
Up to that point.
You mentioned before that it's only been the last 5 years, though, that you've kind of come back. What happened in between, and what brought you back into engaging with the language?
Oh, there were a few things. The first thing was the whānau crisis that I was talking about, which goes back to things that were outside of my control. We moved quite a lot, and where we were moving, there weren't any kura around. Yeah, so we ended up going into mainstream schools that sometimes didn't have a bilingual unit. And then as time went on, the older I got, the less I found it important to practice te reo Māori, because every interaction was in English. Come into my teens, nobody spoke Te Reo Māori. It was all English, and all the waiata, all the songs that we listened to were all, rap music in English. Into my 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, same thing. We're just living a lifestyle, which was, might not have been a very healthy lifestyle, but there was no te ao Māori, no te reo in that. And it wasn't until probably like my mid to late 20s when I joined a band, and the band were a multi-language band. We used to sing in Portuguese, Spanish, and English, and they thought it'd be really cool if we had a Māori intro. And so I started looking at it and going, oh, what? And they're like, yeah, man, if you did a Māori intro before we all walked out, man, it'd be mean. And I'll be like, really? Yeah. Are you sure? All right, yeah, okay, we can do that. And then so it slowly started creeping in then, yeah, when I started realizing actually it is a really, it is a real taonga. It's a real gift. And I haven't been practicing it. I haven't been including it in my day-to-day life. And everybody around me thinks it's awesome. So that was kind of the pull back in. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, thank you for sharing your stories, or at least a little bit of how you've both come to this point here. Obviously, we could have talked for another 4 hours each, at least in terms of the different threads of lives that bring us to this moment. As it's Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, or Māori Language Week, the celebration of it, just got a quick question for both of you. If you want to go first, Mark, why do you think it's important for us as people in Aotearoa to celebrate Māori language?
For me, I'm going to tautoko Parker's kōrero about it being a taonga, a treasure. And for me, it's the tino taonga of this land. It's something that's unique. It's only found here in Aotearoa. And if we don't stand together and fight for it, I mean, as well as it is doing in terms of becoming healthier, and the amount of people that are speaking and wanting to speak, it's still in danger. In 100 years, if we don't keep on the trajectory, it could be anywhere. So for me, it's a treasure, and it's a treasure worth fighting for. And it's the responsibility of all of us, Pākehā, Māori Pākehā, because a lot of the damage done to it was because of colonisation, right? So for me, it's just something that's just so worth saving, so worth protecting, so worth revitalising, and so worth building, And one thing I found over my journey, when I first started out, was just about te reo. I just thought, it's the language. And so when I set off on my thing, I went to the local marae and said, I want to learn. And I thought, 1 year, I'm about to get so far. And I realised in that year, I was about a month into it, and I realised I had to learn the pūrako, the waiata, I had to learn all the tikanga of the marae. It's a huge thing. And it's all interwoven, and it cannot be separated, So it's this massive thing that can be broken down, but it's just this treasure that but the whole Te Ao Māori, the entire package is just worthy of our time and attention. It's just a beautiful thing. So
yeah. It's a big thing. It's a pretty Western thing to I'll just have one bit of this thing, so I'll just consume one aspect, but I guess seeing how it's interwoven is just so important, like language. In some of my psychology study, we're doing a lot of work in the importance of language as it unlocks culture in terms of actually understanding that in the language you use, you actually think differently, whereas Inuit people have 7 different words for snow, or I imagine Scottish people like Sandy have 8 different words for rain, So if you don't speak the language, don't know the language, you can't actually think in the same way or really understand what you're getting at. So I guess it's understanding the interwoven nature of it. There's a whole lot to learn, where it's not just, I'll pick up this word or pick up this word, but in order to say, to love our neighbours is to know them and to listen to them. And there's a whole lot more listening that happens in the wider culture to even just start to think or speak in te reo in a full way, you know. And for yourself, Parker, what does this week mean to you? What do you hope it could mean?
I've seen some massive changes in my time, in my short time, with te reo being in the public arena, in the mainstream arena, from when there was pretty much nothing to where it's at now. And it's awesome. It's massive. It just keeps getting better and better. But this week is really about celebrating the language, you know. A really important thing to remember about te reo Māori is that it was created on this land. Didn't come from somewhere. Yes, some words and some dialects and some mita might have come, some pronunciation might have come from the islands that we migrated from, you know, back then, but the core of the language was created here. The core of te ao Māori was created on this land. We're surrounded by kupu Māori every single day. I don't know how many places in Auckland alone have Māori names for their suburbs, but there's heaps the names of streets, you know. So, I mean, this week is Māori Language Week is an interesting time because I actually go a lot deeper than that. I do mahuru Māori, which is the next step up. And that's where you set yourself a challenge for the whole month of September. So we're in the third week of September, but there's another challenge that us hardcores, well, not hardcores, but, you know, people who really want to challenge themselves, who don't get the opportunity to speak as often as others, will step out and do. So my challenge for this whole month was, and it's been incorporated into my work, so my work have to work around me and that, and I have chosen specific times of the day, the busiest times of the day, where I'll only speak te reo Māori. For the first week, it was only 1 hour a day. Last week, it was 2 hours. This week, it was 3 hours. And next week, it's 4 hours a day. So I'm choosing the busiest times, the times where everybody's in the office and everyone's communicating with each other. When we have clinical meetings, I will only speak te reo Māori. But I keep it really basic, and I use hand gestures. And you'll be surprised how far people can understand what you're talking about when you are kind of helping and directing the movement of the conversation. So yeah, Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori is like the tip of the iceberg for me. You know, it's awesome, but it's just the tip of it, and there's so much more body that can be extended out throughout the whole year. Yeah.
Before you were mentioning, well, this is in the pre-party, in the pre-live service party, you were mentioning the taonga you want to pass down to your kids, right? What would you hope that Aotearoa could be for when they are older in regards to language? What would you love to see in this nation?
That's a good question. I'd like to see, it'd be awesome to see confidence, you know, confidence that if you claim that that you're from here, doesn't matter what generation you are, that you are confident in te reo Māori being an important part of it. I'd like to see more kura taking it on the challenge. Like, I take my hat off to the bro Mark for his mahi that you're doing, bro. Ngā mihi kia koe. Because that's where it all starts. It's right in the young ages. If it's not exposed to them in the young ages, it becomes not a priority as they get older, and by the time they're at high school, they've probably built some whakaaro or some ideas around why it's not important, and that grows into adulthood. Be awesome to have more resources, you know, more things. I mean, you're starting to get some Māori kids shows, Māori like preschool shows, like Tākoro Tribe and hea te mea, Pipima. Okay, and they are, they're pretty much only talk in te reo Māori, and more resources like that, Yeah, I mean, I hope that you'd be able to go into every shop and be able to say kia ora, and for the person to respond with kia ora, kei te pēhea koe, kei te pēhea tō rā, oh, kei te pai me koe hoki, just little really quick interactions. That might be the most of their knowledge of te reo Māori, but for it to be comfortable to be able to do that, whereas, still to this day, I can walk into somewhere and go, kia ora, and they go, hey, and you're like, oh, it makes you feel stinkful even trying to talk te reo Māori. So seeing that kind of worked at and chipped away at.
I worked in retail, it must have been 5-6 years ago, and just naturally would just kia ora. My manager was just like, we don't do that here. So it is still subtly or explicitly in so many different situations like that, but that'd be so cool to see that it is just treated as an official language, which it is, as valid, which is awesome. And for yourself, Mark, in terms of your environment where you work, or like, how would you love to see, I'll ask this, how would you love to see Pākehā better engage in this journey?
This past week, I'll answer in two parts, but this past week, and it's an add-on to what you're saying, Pāka, I kind of did a bit of an experiment, being that it was Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, and I was riding with my son to Akuta, and it goes along this Orewa pathway that goes around the estuary, and I thought, every single person I pass by, I'm going to say kia ora, or mōrena, or atamaria, or mostly just kia ora, actually, just to see what their response would be. And every single person said, hello, good morning, or how you going? Nobody was willing to step out and take that risk. And granted, most of them were kind of my age or older, so I'm sure a lot of tamariki might have given it a go, but yeah, it just made me feel sad, but it also gave me a sense of the state of where we're at and where I want to be in terms of my community. It's getting it beyond just being with our tamariki and getting it out, being able to go to the dairy, same thing, kia ora, kei te pēhea koe, and it just to be natural and a part of who we are, just embedded, and that simple, not long-term goals, yes, but in the next 10 years, to have it to the point where everybody who's willing feels comfortable enough to be able to just give it a go. I got lost in your question, but...
You're answering in two parts, remember?
Oh, yeah. What was the second part? What's the question again?
What would you love to see?
Oh, I'd love to see... at the moment, because I work in a kuta, and I can walk around in that kuta, and kids will just be like, kia ora, Mark, kia ora, and kei te pēhea, the enthusiasm they have for that, the love they have for that, and like Pāka said, it starts off with that youth. If we can get them enthused when they're young and carry that, it's a nation changer. It's a community changer. It's not just the language that they'll be able to enjoy and be thinking about, and their pronunciation. It's the way they view te ao Māori, the way they view Māori in general, the way they view the culture, the value they have. And when the kaiko show the value and the kids pick it up, and that needs to go all the way up through society. And can we wait for the kids to grow up, or can adults now try and get in on that enthusiasm some of those tamariki have and start trying to get in on it? That's my dream, for it to be sooner rather than waiting for those younger ones. Yeah. For some of us older ones just to take up the whittle and just get on board in the shorter term.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because culture changes generationally, but also it is the attitudes of kids can be a testimony and an encouragement to the older generations. What would your encouragement or even challenge to the older ones of us be within this?
So my challenge would be, don't look at it don't look at it as being this huge thing. Start with the small. Start grabbing a few kupu here and there, even if it is kia ora, and just commit to it. Going into places like your workplace or your church, wharetapu, walk into those spaces and think, what separates this from other parts of the world? What is different between, and we talk about that with kura, what is different, if I walked into this wharetapu, what is different between ours and one in the States, you know? What is the defining factor that makes ours, you know, so they can look at us and know, hey, we're in Aotearoa, we're in New Zealand. What is the difference? The Sunday school, you know, out in the wharekai. What is it that separates this from other parts of the world? And really, the main thing that would separate it would be te Reo Māori and things like that. The things of the te Ao Māori existing in those spaces. What would you hear? What would you see? You know, how would it feel? Would there be elements of Māori within every part of, I mean, I'm talking it might be in your home, or it might be in your workplace, it might be in the church. So that's sort of that one whittle. And the other one is to get out there and find a course or find some way of learning. And no, it's not going to be easy. It is a fight and it's a struggle. And you will come up with excuses like, I can't do it, I'm no good with languages, my brain's not made for that, I failed Japanese in college, I'm just not a language guy, you know? There's a million excuses, but if you commit to not stop, and to do your best, you'll get there, and it will make a difference to people around you in your world. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. And had a question come through. Obviously, around a lot of this, like I know even for myself at times it can be like, am I going to pronounce this right? Like, is it going to be like a faux pas? Am I going to do something wrong? Like around cultural stuff. For people who are keen to learn, with that in mind, what are some of the big do's and don'ts around like trying to go on this journey and engage in te reo and waitemāoritanga that you'd have for us, Parker? Like if someone's keen, what are some things, do this and maybe don't do this?
It's a bit of a tricky one, that one, because do's and don'ts. There's only really do's in this scenario here. We're really trying to do. We're not trying to don't. There's not many don'ts. You know, do try and pronounce it. Do Google. Find out the origin of the word or the place that you're thinking about. Do YouTube. Check out YouTube, see if there's any videos that have the word or the story or the history that you're looking for or that you've been asked about. Yeah, the more you do, the more you're going to get confident. Something that is helping my whānau with hearing te reo Māori is there's a YouTube, it's actually a TV show, a Māori TV show, that they've uploaded all the videos onto YouTube, and I literally just have it playing in the background. And it's all in te reo Māori. Yes, they use some words that you probably won't hear very often, but it's having that in the background and just hearing it and it becoming a normal part of what you hear. Don't give up. That's probably the only thing. Every language is hard. Every language is hard to learn. I know that because I've tried to learn other languages outside of Māori and English, and it's hard. I've wanted to give up. But if you really, really persevere and create some milestones around when you're finally saying, for example, when you're finally using kia ora as your opening greeting, and you don't say hello, hi as much anymore, that's worthy of celebration. Celebrate it. Go and celebrate. Man, I said kia ora like 100 times this week. You know, the more when you start, the other thing that I want to encourage people to do is like talking about place names, yeah, because that's the first part. Most of us live in a suburb in Auckland or have lived in a suburb or in a town or a city that has a te reo Māori name. Start there, you know. That's where you can start really claiming where you are and your area by paying respect to it, and you'll find actually that a lot of the names that these suburbs and towns and names are named after have really amazing stories about where they came from, why they are called that. Yeah, not a lot of don'ts, except don't give up, but heaps of do's. There's so many ways you can do to try and do better. Like, tautoko ngā kōrero o matua mark I tēnei po. Look for ways that you can start gaining more knowledge. Look, there's so many online courses now, especially since the COVID lockdown. They can't really do open wānangas anymore, like open groups, but they have heaps online. There's tons of apps out there that you can help to use, and all of these apps, they have the pronunciation in there. Yeah. So,
do you have any like recommendations of specific apps or specific like websites that people could go to? There's
one that was literally released this week. It's by rangatira named Hemi Kelly, mohi ona koe. Right? He is a lecturer at AUT. He is also an author, so he's released a couple books. Māori Phrase a Day is one of those books. He's just released an app. It's called Kōrerorero. Kōrerorero. Francis Fraser might chuck it in the comments after this so that you can go into the comments and check how it's spelt. But it's like Duolingo. It's like Duolingo, but it's te reo Māori. Yeah. So that would be the first one. And then there's the other one is Kupu. Kupu is the one where you can take a photo of something and it'll give you the translation in te reo Māori.
That's awesome. That's cool. And maybe both you guys can feed into this. If someone's listening and like, I want to take the next step, there are those apps, there are those, I guess, YouTubes and that kind of stuff. What's the best way to get kind of connected into one of the courses or like how do I put it, the more intensive, like I want to take this seriously, like what's the best next step to do for that?
I always recommend people to go to Kurapo, which is a Unitec night class. There's two campuses. There's the one in Henderson and there's the one in Mount Albert. And they run it 3 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They have 2 intakes a year, unfortunately. So not a lot, but that would be the first place I would recommend anyone going to try and get immersed in that. Yeah.
Awesome.
There's so many places that are popping up, and it's amazing. They're getting filled up so quickly. You got to get in. You got to get in quick right now. The uptake and from Ngāti Pākehā, and Māori across the board, everyone's keen. So I've been thinking about doing Unitec, maybe Aotearoa too. Yeah, but there's up in Sawirau, there's at the marae they do te ātarangi with a few more visual, hands-on. They use the rākau, the Cuisinart rods. Te Wananga o Aotearoa, they do in Albany if you need somewhere closer. They've got one, a campus in Albany and out west, Mangere. But yeah, AUT, I think Hemi's at AUT. And Facebook has, you alluded to earlier, there's so many Māori groups popping up, people who are keen to learn. So I've joined like 10 and they just pop up on my feed all the time. Whakatauki and little snippets of Hemi. I'm on the Phrase Book a Day one with Hemi Kelly, and it will just break down a page of his book, Puka Puka, and put it into a few more contexts. So there's ways you can kind of do it at home, but I do recommend committing to a course because it means you can't just, if you try and do your own thing at home, if you're like me anyway, I always end up just getting distracted by other things. Whereas when I commit to a course, I'm tied in for that year. you know.
When there's a relationship involved, it's so much more meaningful and easier to learn. We were saying the other day, I've tried to learn French on Duolingo about 8 times, and just it wears out by day 2 or 3. You know, you get the notifications and the level ups, but when there's not the people involved or not the relationship, it just fades away, you know. So I guess that'd be go towards people, learn with others within that, and have it as like a communal journey almost.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I definitely encourage anybody to, like Mark said, make the commitment. It's not only going to be better for how much you take in, but you're also on this journey with other people who are at the same level. And you know, those classes can be quite big, and so you're on a journey with a lot of people. People are all going to be making mistakes and learning at the same time, and so you feel a bit more inclusive, you know, as opposed to sitting outside and making the mistakes on your own. Yeah, so
That's cool. Maybe we'll have to get a crew from shore to go next year.
good idea.
That'd be
Definitely.
awesome.
Yeah.
And you always think, oh, next year or the year after I'll do it. Well, it'll never come, hey, like all things. So it's just decide, is it worthy for me? And just, but just an extra thing that I was just thinking of, you know, koe e whakamā, like don't be ashamed of making mistakes. That's sort of one of my biggest things is sometimes I won't speak because I'm too afraid of who I'm with or of making a mistake. And that's the number one way to kill it, really, for yourself, is you just got to speak.
That's awesome. Really encouraging, guys. Obviously, what we've been chatting about is the very little tip of the iceberg in terms of a whole lot of other bigger conversations around history of Aotearoa, the involvement of church and like colonialism, globalization, the importance of protecting Indigenous knowledge and taonga in so many ways. So obviously, this is the first like little insight by celebrating the language where it's the top of a big iceberg. So I'm sure there'll be lots of ongoing conversations. So if you have any further questions or, well, as Shore community people watching this live thing, I guess it's so cool that we've got the two of you in our community as people to go to from different stories and different experiences. So I just want to thank you guys for being open to having a kōrero tonight around this and being vulnerable with your stories and being encouraging and I guess challenging at times as well for us to engage in this story and showing that it can be done and it can be done well. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you guys tonight. And, do we have a question, Fraser? Oh, we've got a couple of questions. That's cool.
Pato, mate.
Well, before we get into that question, just touching base on what we've been talking about, there's nothing more, and I get there's the enjoyment I get from helping people level up in whatever part in life, but especially te reo Māori, is second to none. I just absolutely love helping people on whatever journey they're on. So if people in our church want to or have a question or a word that they're trying to learn, if the pronunciation is correct or whatever, don't look at coming to Mark or myself as a bad thing. It's actually a massive thing, and I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel comfortable to saying it or learning about it properly, or the way it should be said. Yeah, I just thought that should be said. That's cool. One thing I always think about is when I go and ask people for help, and there's that little sometimes butterfly feeling in my stomach that stops me. And I just want to, to our whānau who we share this space with, that I understand that feeling. I know what that's like. And my job literally is to help people overcome the next hurdle that they're facing. So, yeah, just thought I'd share that.
That's awesome, Parker. A quick question. Both questions kind of touch on a similar thing. Do you have any favourite waiatas that we could include in our songs here, or like any ones that you're like, oh, this would be cool to sing in this place? Maybe not right now, unless you wanted to, but like, are there any good waiatas or ones close to your heart that you'd love to hear sung?
Definitely for me, yeah. I could think of two. one from my East Coast side and one from my far north side that I'd love to bring into the church and start getting into it. They all require hand actions and actual body movement. It's not just using your voice and waiata, you're using your whole being. I'd have to have a think about which one to come from up north, but the one from the East Coast would be Kapi Oioi. Kapi Oioi was written by an ex-soldier who came back from the war, Māori guy, and talks about his love for coming back home. Yeah.
That's awesome. We'll have to get into it when we get back in this building with everyone.
Yeah, we should look into that.
Oh, cool. No, we'll tee it up. And maybe you've got some ideas on this one, Mark.
Yeah, you got your waita, so I just think a couple of karakia that we could, as a whānau, learn, even something quite small, that could, be used in the church, but also be taken out into, our lives outside the church. Because that's also an integral sort of part of Te Ao Māori. So, yeah.
Yeah, tautoko that one.
Cool.
Also, recently there was an album that was released. There's two albums I'm going to hype up right now. The first one was Waiata. And Waiata is a collection of songs that were translated into Te Reo Māori. They were really popular radio hits. That got translated into Te Reo Māori. One of them is Don't Forget Your Roots, 660, and Benny and Drax Project, those sorts of people. And the other album came out not long ago. It's by wahine called Maisie Rika, and she released an album, Ko Wareware o Te Ingoa Tūturu Engari. I think the name is Matariki o Tāwhirimatea, aroha mai if I've got that wrong, but it's Matariki. The album is about the cluster and talks about whakapapa and connection to Matariki. So if anybody's watching that's interested in hearing some waiata Māori, those are two albums that I would recommend, yeah.
And she's amazing. You don't need to necessarily understand what she's saying. It's beautiful waita.
Oh, that's awesome. And I guess within this church I've heard a few other songs by them. There's Te Rātiri, which used to be known as Link. I think so the song Tuia or Kia Kaha. That was from their album a few years ago. Their latest one I think is I think Majority Te Reo, which is a really good listen. And there's something in it, like I don't know what it is, but somehow when it's on, it just seems like New Zealand Aotearoa worship. It's like, feels a lot closer to your heart and the soul than just singing some American accent lyrics, that kind of stuff. So that's an awesome album that I've really loved, and we're already playing a few of their songs, so that's a good one to look into as well. This is cool. Well, it's almost 6 o'clock, so we're almost done. Time's gone fast. I'm sure this is the start of a long kororo in terms of so many more things to talk about over the coming months, years, and all that kind of stuff. But thank you guys so much. Mark, would you like to close? Well, any concluding thoughts before we close in the karakia?
Kia kaha, kōrero i te reo Māori, i nā wā katoa. But, be strong and just what you know, use it. Yeah? The little bits that you know, use it. That's my final statement.
Cool. There you are.
I just love where we're at right now, like I said before, we've come so far and we've still got so much more to go, but we're moving with the times, and us doing this in our church service on a Sunday evening just shows how far we're moving with the times, and that we're using this time to acknowledge Te Reo Māori. Like I said, Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that encompasses that, and you talk about people around the world and how they view Aotearoa, New Zealand, and one of the very main things that comes up is something to do with Te Ao Māori. It's either karakia or it's haka, or it's tamoko, our tattoos, and artistic designs. Or it goes back to the migrations and how they managed to do that using star navigation and seafaring techniques. It's all that sort of stuff. And so really make the most of that feeling. That's a really special feeling where people around the world acknowledge us for those things. We need to take those and hold them close, learn all about them, and when we're struggling, like we do in everyday life, reach out to someone and go, hey man, I'm really struggling with how this word sounds. I keep saying taka. It's not takapuna, is it? No, it's not. But kei te pai, I got stuck calling it takapuna for a while. Kei te pai, we can work this through together, and we're doing that now. Ka pai.
That's awesome. Wow. One step in a long journey for us, for Shore Vineyard. And again, just thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your encouragements and challenges as well. And I hope that we can honour them by taking another step as a community. So thank you, guys.
Kia ora.
Kia ora e hoa.
Yeah. And Mark, did you want to close this off with a karakia?
Ai, seems weird to sit down though. So,
Stand?
ai, ki te pai? Oh, ka pai. Kia inoi tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou āriki a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, ake, ake amine.
Āmene.
Amen.
Tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia ki te nako, o ngā tangata katoa. Tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia